what I really loved about it was that I was doing the work as well. There was a facilitator holding space and guiding, but I loved that I was the one doing the active breathing, that my body knew how to heal itself, even though I wasn't conscious of that's what was happening when I was experiencing breathwork. Well, after that, I just continued to want to practice breathwork for myself because I was seeing such incredible healing and results from it.
You're listening to the Get a Helmet podcast, currently illuminating the fullness of the human expression. Hi, I'm Caroline Aylward, a filmmaker and yoga and meditation teacher focused on the power of human connection, story, and authenticity. The Get a Helmet podcast started when I was living in my grandfather's spare bedroom with one microphone and an intense passion for storytelling. To me, conversation is one of life's great adventures. It highlights who we are as individuals, while at the same time revealing our deeply human similarities. I'm curious to learn what makes us unique, but also what unites us and connects us at the heart. On this show, we hear stories of resilience, intuition, growth, perseverance, love, and so much more. So what brings you joy and makes you feel safe? What grounds you down and makes you feel good, truly deep down in your bones good? Because life is tough. What's your helmet? Hello, my beautiful angels. Caroline here, and welcome to the Get a Helmet podcast. Today, we have a beautiful interview for you with the lovely Ana Lilia. And Ana is a breathwork coach and an intuitive guide, and she helps people really connect to themselves to move past things like anxiety and depression and trauma in their life using the power of breathwork. So we go really deep into this conversation about how breathwork, why breathwork is so powerful, and how her gifts came to be, how she discovered them in her own personal story. And we kick things off with a really beautiful short breathwork practice. So that's a super special treat for you. And you can find Ana online at analilia.net. That's ANALILIA.net. Or you can find her on Instagram. She is _ANA_LILIA. And she is truly a beam of light. I really enjoyed this conversation, and she's got some fun things that she'll be offering this summer. So definitely go check it out. Some self-love, some self-care, and really just the idea that breathwork is so accessible. Like when we're feeling a little cray-cray, when we're feeling that anxiety spiraling, breathwork is such an accessible and incredible, powerful way to get you out of your head and back into your body. And breathwork is a somatic practice. Some people think that in order for it to be a somatic practice, you've got to be dancing around or moving your body. But you are moving your diaphragm and moving your lungs and creating space in your body with your breath. So it is a somatic practice, and we do a lot of this inside of the Circle, my private membership. So if you're curious about joining the Circle, please check out the link in the show notes. Come join us. We have monthly full moon dance rituals, which are a whole vibe and such a party. And we also meet a second time during the month all together as a group for a monthly meetup, a group session of some kind. You get access to a library of healing practices, including breath work, including somatic movement, energy work, meditations, and you get recordings to all of our live classes. And on top of that, my love, you get 15% off of all Get a Helmet offerings. And what's so interesting is that this week is a full moon. So we'll be having a full moon dance ritual inside of the Circle this week. You do not want to miss it. Please come join us. They are so fun and so sacred. And this community of women are literally so incredible. So I would love for you to come in. It's like such a beautiful way to find that extra level of support to help you as you expand and step into this next level of being, and to really be held accountable and just truly supported in every way. So yeah, that's on Thursday. So excited about that. And I would love to have you. So come join the Circle and come follow us over on Instagram at @getahelmet_. Enjoy this conversation with Ana Lilia. I love you so much, and I will see you on the other side. Listen, I love drinking a little wine, or in my case, mezcal cocktails, kicking back and hanging out with my girls. I love to have a good time. But the reality is, alcohol amplifies anxiety. Alcohol in the nervous system, not the best of friends. This precious and divine nervous system of mine loves and craves a break from alcohol, and I take them frequently. When I discover fun, calming beverages to drink in its place, I get really excited, especially when it has CBD and adaptogenic herbs. My nervous system does a little happy dance. So we're not just talking about pouring some kombucha in a wine glass with some ice, even though that's my jam. We're not just talking about taking some CBD, but this beverage called Recess combines calming hemp CBD and balancing adaptogens to keep you calm, cool, and collected. So in the Recess beverages, we've got hemp, which for me is like calms the mind and centers the body immediately. We've got American ginseng, L-theanine, which I super duper love as well, eases tension, brightens the mood. You can find L-theanine in green tea as well, and I always say this, it feels like pressing the reset button. And it also has lemon balm. The Recess beverages are low in sugar and they're organic. The flavors are so delicious. We've got black cherry, pomegranate hibiscus, blood orange, peach ginger, coconut lime, blackberry chai. Yes to all, please. If you head on over to takearecess.com and enter the code GETAHELMET, all caps, you will get 15% off of beverages, apparel, and subscriptions. They actually have really cute apparel and clothes. What an awesome brand. Head on over to their website, takearecess, RECESS.com, and enter the code GETAHELMET, GETAHELMET, for 15% off. And enjoy! The first time I stepped into a therapist's office was during my parents' extremely difficult divorce. It felt forced, and I was super resistant to it. It was awful, and it really jaded my view of therapy. Later in life, when I started having paralyzing panic attacks and anxiety, my boss at work recommended I go see her therapist. At this point, I was desperate, so I set up an appointment. I can't even begin to describe how much therapy helped me at the beginning of my healing journey. I encourage everyone who works with me or who enrolls in one of my programs to do this work in conjunction with a therapist. And let's be real, everything is happening virtually these days, from the comforts of our own homes. Enter BetterHelp. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help, it's professional counseling done securely online that is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, and you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. So you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as with traditional therapy. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. The good news is, BetterHelp is offering 10% off your first month using the code GETAHELMET when you go to betterhelp.com/getahelmet. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/getahelmet using the code GETAHELMET for 10% off your first month. Your mental health deserves to be nourished. Well, Anna, I am so thrilled to have you here on the Get a Helmet podcast. I'm so glad we were connected. I think it's such important work that you're doing, teaching people how to breathe into their bodies and to feel less stress. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes, breathwork has been life-changing for me. And that's actually the reason why I fell in love with breathwork, because it did drop me into my body immediately. And it made me aware of what it was holding on to, physical sensations, emotions. And it's such a simple practice. We obviously breathe automatically, and most of us probably don't even notice our breath. But when you do notice your breath, it gives you so much information. So if you're open to it, I would love to guide you in a short little practice to connect you with your breath in this moment.
Please give it to me.
Let's do it. So if you are able to, you can close your eyes if you're driving Anyone out there listening who can't, that's totally fine. But before we change the way that we're breathing, just notice what is happening with your breath. Is it short and shallow from your chest? Or are you breathing from your belly, your diaphragm? Is it long and deep? Or are you holding your breath? Does it feel difficult to breathe? And now I'm going to invite you to drop down your breathing to your diaphragm. So allowing your belly to completely expand as you take a deep breath in and slowly exhaling out. And noticing by dropping your breathing down to your belly, how do you feel in this moment? Do you feel calmer, more grounded, safer? Another thing we tend to not do is fully exhale. So notice your exhale. Sometimes it helps to exhale through your mouth, almost as if you're blowing into a straw, so that you're slowly, completely exhaling, releasing any stale air in your body, stale energy as well. And now that you are in your body and connected to your body, if it feels right to you, maybe ask your body, what does it need right now? What could you do to support it? And let's take a couple more deep breaths in, slowly exhaling out. Deep breath in and slowly exhaling out. And one more. Slowly exhaling. And before you completely come back, if it feels supportive to your body, to start to do some gentle movements, maybe even rolling back your shoulders or moving your head, wiggling your toes, your fingers. And taking your time, slowly open your eyes, noticing what's around you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It is so amazing to me every single time. I think I just said this out loud to my sister this morning that we know the things that make us feel good, but sometimes they are so difficult to do. We know the things are those helmets that will help us ground down, that will help regulate the nervous system. But in those moments of panic and activation, we lose sight of how simple it is to get back to that grounded place.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We forget to breathe.
Yeah,
We just want someone to tell us what to do because it feels
totally.
so overwhelming. Um,
Which makes sense. And this is why, like, I tell people sometimes to like write it down in the notes in your phone,
yeah.
write those helmets down, write that 10 deep breaths into your belly down in your phone. Cause
Mhm.
sometimes it's just like, okay, what do I do now? Look at this, read this, do this. And sometimes it's so simple. Sometimes it's like one breath or a sip of
Yeah.
water.
Yeah. Anything to just bring you back to this present moment. And yes, regarding breath work, it's a general term that refers to actively breathing. And so there's a lot of different types of breath work. that you can use to calm yourself if you are feeling really anxious and overwhelmed. But whenever people ask me for a tip, I always tell them, like, just drop it down to the belly, because when you are in that state of panic and feeling overwhelmed, you're probably not going to remember 4, 6, 8. Or am I like box breathing? Am I like holding it here? Like, and that in itself can feel overwhelming, or have you think like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing it right. And bring in even more anxiousness, nervousness, overwhelm. So I always just like to simplify it. And sometimes people even get not annoyed, but it's like, that's too simple. Like, tell me more. It's like, it's the most simple thing that I have found is the most effective thing. And we do want all these like fancy tools and apps and this and that. But at the end of the day, it still requires you to do the work. And when you eliminate all the bells and whistles, it goes back to this, right?
I
To
really think
breathe.
what people are searching for when they want the app or the this or that is it's the clear direction and the accountability, because other things become more important. Getting your work done, getting your workout in, taking care of your kids or your partner,
Yeah.
it becomes more important. And, this is where we can kind of dig into the conversation around self-care and self-love, but you really cannot show up for someone else if you have not shown up for yourself. And what we just did, what you just so beautifully led me through was what, 2 minutes long? And
Yeah. If
such
that.
a simple practice
Mhm.
of breathing into my diaphragm and into my belly. And I feel like I showed up into this interview with you coming from another meeting, and my energy was a little airy, a little chaotic, and now it's down in my root. And
Yes.
that happened so quickly. And
Yeah.
so thank you for that again, because now I can be more present with you throughout this conversation.
You're
So we're getting some
welcome.
real time effects of breath work right now.
Yes. I love it. That's another thing with me. It's like I've attended, other breathwork teachers sessions, and there's a lot of talking. And for me, it's more about the practice. Like, I just want to do it. Like, it's not until you actually experience it for yourself that you really are going to either love it or be too activated by it and be like, oh gosh, I think this is a little too much for me. Or it's going to be now a tool that you're going to go back to over and over again, but you have to do it. You can't just be told about it. So I'm so grateful that we were able to do this quick practice
Me
of
too.
connecting with our
Me
breath.
too. Yes. And I would love to hear more about what led you to the practice. I read somewhere on your website that the first time you went, you had been struggling with anxiety.
Mhm.
And that first breathwork session, you felt tingling and numbness, and you had
Mhm.
an emotional release. So
Mhm.
tell us what led you into that breathwork practice that day on your mat or your pillow,
Yeah.
and how you got to where you are now.
I didn't even know that I had anxiety for as a child or as a teenager, or even, well, in my 20s. It's when my symptoms started to get more aggravated, where I even started to develop like a nervous tic where I was constantly counting on my fingers. I was grinding my teeth a lot at night. So I would wake up with headaches. It would hurt to like chew food. Um, I remember in high school, like my back went out and I had no idea why. Like, I was 16. There's nothing wrong with my body. And all of a sudden I bent over to get, I think, my backpack out of my trunk. And then it hurt, like I couldn't stand back up. I'm like, this is so weird. And just other things, stomach aches, like I would have IBS symptoms and just didn't know. My parents never talked about mental health. I was never presented the opportunity to go to therapy. So at the time, my partner was like, hey, you have a lot of trauma that you haven't dealt with. Like, you should maybe look into it. So my dad was an alcoholic, um, drinking while I was a child. And when I was 10 years old, he finally got sober. Unfortunately, he just started drinking again after being sober for 30 years. So I've been navigating that reactivation of inner child being like, oh my gosh, like what's happening again? Being the oldest in my family, I have a lot of responsibility. I'm also the first generation daughter of immigrants. So I'm the one getting the phone calls from his doctors right now and like dealing with family stuff. And connecting with my breath has been instrumental in navigating these last 2 weeks of intervention and getting help. And I'm so grateful that I found breath work 6 years ago during another time where I was also feeling out of control of my life, overwhelmed. I was feeling like a victim constantly, like felt like I was doing the right thing, but then I wasn't being respected or I wasn't being heard and I wasn't really fully taking ownership of my part. And so at the time I was doing psychotherapy to help me with this childhood trauma. So I was starting to develop tools. And actually this psychologist, she taught me trauma release exercises, TRE. So that was actually one of the first exercises that brought me into my body and made me realize that our body holds on to trauma. So when I experienced breath work, that's what it reminded me of because my body was involuntarily moving. My hands cramped up. My body was shaking. I was sobbing, like full on snot. And I'm like in a room full of strangers laying on the ground. Luckily, I wasn't afraid of that experience because I had, gradual introductions to this. And I say this because, again, if you're completely new to this, it can be jarring and re-traumatizing to experience this type of release if you're not doing it with a facilitator that's able to hold space for trauma like that. So after I did this breathing exercise, I felt so much lighter. Like physically, I felt like I released, 30 pounds that I was carrying. During the time I was also depressed. And so I just felt very blah, disconnected. I didn't feel hopeful. And it sounds even crazy to say it, but like I stepped outside and the sky looked super blue. The trees, the color, like everything just felt like it was shimmering and brighter. And I felt like a brand new person. And that was just from like an hour class. So I was hooked. I was like, whatever this was,
Yes.
I want to do this again because it was such an incredible release. And what I really loved about it was that I was doing the work as well. There was a facilitator holding space and guiding, but I loved that I was the one doing the active breathing, that my body knew how to heal itself, even though I wasn't conscious of that's what was happening when I was experiencing breathwork. Well, after that, I just continued to want to practice breathwork for myself because I was seeing such incredible healing and results from it. And so I combined breathwork with therapy, and it really just accelerated even more my healing. At the time, had already been introduced to other healing modalities. I had gone to my first healer where I feel like I had my awakening, and she was validating things that had happened in my life, even though she didn't know who I was or anything about me. I came across theta healing, which is a form of healing where it's kind of like hypnosis, where you enter into a meditative state and the practitioner is helping you get to the core of these blocks, these limiting beliefs, these trauma, and helping you to reprogram them. So that was another form of therapy that I found really helpful. And I even had already done a training on how to facilitate because I was really curious to learn more. But when I came across breathwork, I'm like, this is what I want to do. Like, not only for myself, but I want to learn how to hold space, how to help other people get back into their body and heal themselves using their breath. It felt very accessible, felt very simple yet powerful, and I could help a lot of people at the same time, as opposed to theta healing. felt like a therapy session. So it was like more one-on-one, and I'm like, no, I want more. So that's how I came across breathwork. And it wasn't, I believe it was only about 6 months after I discovered it that I started to do trainings for it. And then it just naturally unfolded, like with everything that I've done in my life. I just kind of follow an interest and let it unravel by itself without forcing it. So I told my friends, I'm like, hey, I just learned this practice. Do you want to come over and breathe? And so my first breathwork circle had 4 people and a pet. And they were all crying. They also all had this incredible release. And slowly but surely, they started to invite their friends, and we would go to someone else's apartment and do it. And it's been just a really beautiful journey. I've been facilitating for 5 years now,
Wow.
and just how it has unfolded, and other modalities that I have also incorporated into it. There was a point in when I was starting to hold space for more people, like at a yoga studio, I noticed that I would hear things like words or messages, and I thought it was really weird. So I would try to ignore it, but it would just get louder, and it wouldn't be like, it would be distracting. And it wasn't until I would say it out loud to the group that then it went away. And then I could get back to reminding people to breathe.
A
And
little
then after
channeling.
class, people would come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, what you said, I was thinking that at that moment. Or they would be like, I felt like you were in my mind, or like you were speaking directly to me. So I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And the more I continued to do it, the more I would get these messages. And then that's when one of my healers said, yeah, you're a clairvoyant, like you're receiving messages, you're channeling, but you need to learn how to protect your space and also just have boundaries, energetic boundaries. So he suggested that I go to a clairvoyant school. So I did that for 2 years, like weekly. I would go to this school and we would practice grounding. Like the first year, I'm a Sagittarius. And so I love learning. I'm like a perpetual student, but I want things quick. And the pace of this class forced me to slow down. And so for 6 months, like we were just practicing how to ground and run our energy. But now I'm like, I'm so grateful that I have that, because I am able to hold space for bigger groups and not feel drained after holding space. If anything, now I feel energized. So it's been quite the journey of getting to this place.
I love that the more you did breath work, the clearer these messages became that you were getting, these divine kind of intuitive messages became. It's almost like, well, it is. The breath work clears away the stagnation and the clutter. Like I feel it from my tissues, from my cells, just like the layers. My friend likes to say, wiping off the cobwebs of your
Yes.
system so
Yeah.
that you can then receive those kinds of messages. And like you said, step outside and the trees look greener and the sky looks bluer
Hmm.
and like your eyes are brighter and you're
Hmm.
just soaring. And
Yeah.
I think that feeling is something that an anxious person doesn't believe they have access to. And they do. You did, I did. And, you know, like you said, the way that breathwork has anchored you through these intense moments of transition and trauma bubbling up again, which is just truth for all of us as a human
Hmm.
on this planet, knowing you have this tool to help you regulate and to come back to your body, come back to trust. And I love so much that you trusted your desire. Like you trusted that when this lit you up and you followed it. And like you said, it's happened to you in many other departments of your life. And just to follow that light, it just sounds like there's so much connection, everywhere. Clearly, if you're, a clairvoyant and able to receive these messages, there's a lot of connection going
Yeah.
on, from higher realms and whatever it is that you believe. But, I think that in my work and in my practice, we do a lot of somatic movement and dance. And I think that there's something very similar about the release that you get with breath work, because breath work is a somatic practice. You're
Mm-hmm.
using your lungs and your
Mm-hmm.
diaphragm. And so sometimes it's just the most powerful thing that you can experience, even though people are like, it's so simple, take 10 deep
Yeah.
belly breaths. Everyone's like, okay, like I've read that in an inspirational quote somewhere, it's like, no, but like really do it and see if
Yeah.
notice how hard it is to even get from 1 to 10 before your mind starts to wander.
Mhm.
I like, before I go to bed, I'm like, okay, I'm going to count to 10, do 10 deep belly breaths. And by the time I get to about 5, I've thought about tomorrow, and then I got to start
Mhm.
over, and then I'm asleep.
Mhm. That's a great practice.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Kind of like the modern day counting sheep, if you will.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. And I mean, I feel we're all healers. Um,
Totally.
from the time that we were children, we're so intuitive, connected, but then other people start to tell us how to think or what's real and what's not real. And we start to contract again. But yes, breathwork does open you up. And so I have clients who see colors. I don't see colors when I do breathwork, but they have this whole like kaleidoscope going on of
So
colors when after we do the active breathing, when we go into resting breath, they're like, oh my gosh, there's this beautiful purple and then a yellow. And what they also love is that, yeah, they're reminded of their truth, like what is important to them, how they really feel at the core, parts of them that aren't necessarily recognized or connected to on a day to day. I just had a session this morning with a client, and she's like really upset about friend stuff that happened, and she's always has been someone who like follows the rules, and she's not understanding why she's getting a different outcome now. So it was like her teenage self that was feeling confused and angry that she does everything that she's told, and now she's not being recognized or praised. If anything, she's being treated really poorly. And by her having that recognition, she just felt empowered again and giving love and connecting to her inner teenager. She's like, oh, I feel so much lighter. I feel like back to myself and not in this just state of confusion and sadness, rather having information of why she's feeling the way she's feeling, and then comforting those parts of herself so that she can feel back in control.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of a podcast episode that came out a few weeks ago, getting to the root of the anxiety that's living in your system versus just trying to manage it, quote unquote, for your
Right.
entire life, or push it down, or, numb,
Mhm.
numb to push it away. This is understanding what it is that you're actually feeling, or what's the belief underneath the thought and underneath the feeling. And that's where your trauma lives. I mean, that's informed by what's living in your subconscious. And so you mentioned this before, but talking more about breath work and how it can help you heal your trauma.
Mhm.
How does that work?
Well, the way that I hold space for my clients is they're doing the active breathing. They're able to get into their body, identify how they're feeling, where they're holding different emotions. I have them connect to it. I have them ask or think about how old this sensation or emotion is. And that usually takes them back to a memory. So then I have them connect with that younger version of themselves and give that younger version of themselves the love, the safety, the validation, the comfort to help calm that part of them that's been activated all of these years. Um, I have a client that I'm currently working with. So I have one-on-one coaching program called Reset. And usually I work with women who are feeling really overwhelmed and anxious and depressed. And they're just tired of being in that state. They've tried a lot of things, therapy, medication, and they're kind of at their breaking point where they're like, I like whatever you do, like I'm open to it, even if it's out there.
Those are the best clients because they're just like,
right? They're ready.
We'll do anything.
They're ready. Yes. And so this young woman, she also has a lot of anxiety. And I also have a self-guided program called Breathwork for Anxiety. And it's 9 recorded meditations practices to address different symptoms of anxiety. So we first start with body connection, then we go into mind awareness. And then we start to do flipping the script, I call it, of like starting to change your mindset, the way you're seeing things. So that had really helped her. But there is still something more, right, that needed to be looked at. So we started to do this digging work. And sure enough, it's like there's this trauma of when she was a child, of seeing their parents fighting all the time, of knowing that she was an undesired pregnancy. And so she's carrying all of this responsibility. This is all unconscious, of feeling like she shouldn't be alive. Basically, if she weren't alive, then there wouldn't be all these problems in her family.
Wow.
And that's really heavy. You know, there's this like panic little girl inside of her that just wants mom and dad to stop fighting. And so we've had to go back to that little girl to give her a lot of love, a lot of safety, to find out where are her safe havens? Where does she feel happy? Where can she play and be a child? So for her, it was being at the beach. So now she's she's physically going to the ocean to connect, to ground herself, to calm. If she can't physically go, using that visualization. And it really has helped her to feel calmer, not just here and there, but like to have this just internal calmness that she hasn't felt ever before.
I love it's so beautiful. And as you're speaking, I'm just like, this is such deep inner child healing, you know? And I have these 2 photos of me as a little girl.
Oh,
and one of them is like in the ocean.
Oh my gosh.
This like tiny little bikini bottom that I'm wearing. Sorry for those of you who can't see them, but there's 2 pictures of me as a little girl that I have on my altar where I sit, because I mean, honestly, your client story sounds very similar to mine.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is we all carry these stories, and they all happen when we're younger, and they imprint themselves into our nervous systems, you know, and are passed down genetically in our DNA. And so when we sit and we do breath work and we are having conscious space held for us, so much can come forward, and you can realize things you didn't even realize. You can get so much clarity that you didn't even think you had access to. You can allow the emotion to come forward so that it can be cleared. And it's just so beautiful. I love the question that you ask of how old is this memory? Yeah.
A lot of times as well, my clients, they're conscious of the trauma because they have done a lot of therapy, but there's like a layer they haven't gone to of the embodiment, since we do somatic work, of also having the compassion, I guess, as well towards parents or whoever did this trauma, the understanding, the intellectual understanding of it. But I'm like, but there's a deeper part of you that's angry, that feels like she's not being heard, that still doesn't feel loved. And this isn't about blaming anyone. Like, yes, everyone did the best that they could. We're all just showing up with our traumas. You know, we're all just traumatized children trying to navigate this world.
Yes.
But now we're going to another layer, another level to really help heal, give love, trust this younger you, so that it's not continuing to be triggered in moments where you don't feel like you're in control, where you're feeling like the same thing is happening over and over again. And so the next time that you do get triggered, now you have this extra information and you know how old you are, the one that's upset or feels unsafe in this moment. So then that's the awareness and the empowerment, because then you can take steps to reassure that younger you that you're safe, to trust you. You're going to set up some boundaries. You're going to leave the situation, whatever it is, to create again that safety, that love, that trust for that younger self. And so that's the practice, the ongoing practice, to remain calm, to have that inner peace, to be able to navigate difficult situations.
Yeah. And like you said, to feel empowered, which is like the most important thing, to feel safe and to feel empowered. And, now it makes so much sense you explaining these kind of intuitive hits that you get and downloads that you get. And because I was reading also on your website about moon circles and working with the
Oh,
moon.
yeah.
And I have a membership program where we do full moon dance rituals every month with the moon. And
Oh,
it's
fun.
a freaking party, but it's so medicinal because the moon
Yeah.
is so healing. And I want to hear more about that. And I feel like the effects of breath work would be heightened at that time.
Yeah, depending if it's a new moon or a full moon. For my new moon circles, it's all about planting seeds.
Yeah.
But I also incorporate a fire ceremony into it. And all of this is virtual,
Cool.
where, I open up the portal to them, to the gathering, and then we start to drop in, connect with ourselves using our breath. We don't do a full active breathing, but similar to the practice that you and I just did at the
Yep.
beginning, like just to center themselves. I read a couple astrological messages regarding the qualities of the moon, and then we go into writing exercises. So that's been a really fun way to have people connect. So we start in my new moon circle by releasing. So before we plant our seeds for what we want to manifest for the upcoming month or however long you want, what are those blocks that are making it difficult? Whether it's people in your life, beliefs, anything. So we write it down and then we transmute the energy using the element of the fire, which is really powerful. And it's always incredible because the way that the papers burn just depends on whatever energy is charged on it. So sometimes they just burst into flames.
Wow.
Sometimes it's a slow burn where it keeps on going off. Sometimes there's words that don't burn. And so sometimes it's like, fear didn't burn, or it burns in the shape of a heart. There's a lot of magic in it. So we start with that, and then we go into the intention setting. So we're calling in those dreams, those goals, those desires, and then we do breath work. So then with the active breathing, we're continuing to move the energy. And yeah, I'm channeling messages for the group and helping to recognize, validate whatever these further blocks are, and then also really ingraining into their subconscious these goals. Because we also have sharing. So people share in the chat, like what these goals are, what are they releasing? So I reaffirm them while we're doing the active breathing. And then we come back and share. And it's just a really potent collection time together. And for the full moon, it's more about releasing. And so this last full moon, we wrote a breakup letter to whatever we have outgrown. Because we had an eclipse as well. So everything was super amplified.
Yes.
Total lunar eclipse. And that was a really powerful exercise of being really honest with yourself. And a lot of times what comes up in these moon circles is like deep down inside, you know what you have to do, but it still feels really scary, or you're not quite ready. I always tell my clients, I'm like, move energy. So if you need to have a difficult conversation with someone, or if you're thinking about switching jobs, like before you get to that point, I encourage you and my clients to move the energy so that you can be in a place where you feel grounded and in your power, and it's not emotionally charged. And that could take time. It could take years. Like I've dealt with stuff where I'm constantly, and moving energy you can do it in many different ways. I'm a very visual person, so I do a lot of visualization, or I actually talk. Like I imagine myself having that conversation. And I first just let the raw emotions come out, the anger, the frustration, I don't censor myself. And so again, that's another way of validating all of those emotions. And the more you do this, you're going to get to a point where you're super clear on what you want to communicate. You feel really confident. So when you actually have a conversation, you're completely in your power and you're not giving anything to the other person to really get defensive about, because you're just communicating from your heart. And I have found that as a really powerful way of manifesting as well. So,
That's a beautiful practice. And I love that you brought up what I describe as vocal journaling, where I just talk to myself out loud. Like sometimes I feel like when I'm journaling, the pen can't go fast enough.
Mhm.
And there's something about typing in a Google Doc or something on my computer. I'm like, I've got enough computer time.
Yeah.
So I will just sit and talk to myself and kind of put myself and embody
Mhm.
those situations and conversations and see
Mhm.
how it feels and let the raw emotion fly so
Yes.
that you can clear it and then process and integrate and then go into those situations or conversations, like you said, anchored in your being, anchored in your worth, and really disconnected from how they do respond to you and being so clear on what it is that you need. I love that. I love just this entire conversation about using your breath, so simple, to sharpen that tool of intuition that we all have.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. So for anybody listening, where would you recommend that they start? Do you have any like favorite styles of breath work or like places for them to visit and get started with this?
Yeah, I have a free offering, several free offerings actually. I have a quick 5-minute breath work for the morning. So this is more to energize you. And we do a quick circular breathing, belly, chest, exhale. And while you're breathing and oxygenating your body and starting to release feel good endorphins, I'll also have you set an intention for your day. So it's just a good habit of like starting to visualize, all right, how do I want to feel today? What's going to happen? And again, I'm all about encouraging you to be in your power and to feel like you're in control of your life. So it's a really great grounding and energizing practice that you can get on my website. Um, the practice that I use when I'm holding space is a 2-stage breathing, where it's breathing from our diaphragm, from our chest, and then exhaling. I have changed the way that I give instruction, where I really want you to take charge and decide whether it feels better to breathe through your nose the whole time or through your mouth. So when I first started, it was all through open mouth, and that was too activating for some bodies and nervous systems. And it would remind them of what it's like to have a panic attack.
Yeah.
It would bring up like a really terrible memory. And I was always able to like bring them back into their body and feel safe, but I don't want to overwhelm people anymore. Like, so it's more of a gradual. So most people end up just breathing through their nose. I find that it's easier to exhale through your mouth because you're really able to push out the carbon dioxide out of your body. But yes, the 2 inhales and then exhale. And then another layer to my practice is music therapy. I use the lyrics of songs as a tool to take you on a journey. And every playlist, I have thousands of playlists,
Oh my gosh.
is different. And it's also like my intuition picks the songs. And sometimes even in the moment, because for example, in my moon circles, because we have moved so much energy throughout that by the time we get to the breath work, I'm like, we need some new songs. I'm playing DJ in the moment, which is fun for me.
Totally.
But that's another component to my practice, where I use music as well to help you release emotions, to remember things. And then my clairvoyance gifts, where I kind of describe myself as, you're the driver and I'm the passenger with the map. And I'm kind of giving you directions. And I'm like, oh, let's turn here and let's look at this over here. But again, if you don't want to go there, that's totally fine. You can continue on your path.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a really powerful just combination of having all of them together. Yeah, it's been beautiful.
So where can people find these free practices to get going? Maybe they've tried breath work and they dig it, but there's probably people that have never really tried.
Mhm.
So I'd love to go check it out myself too.
Yeah, so I have on my website, analilia.net, it's with one N. Um, that's where you can get the free 5-minute meditation. You can also sign up there for my free breathwork class, which is on Saturdays called Community Gathering. And I started that last year in March at the beginning of the pandemic as a free resource for people to hop on. And this is a live class. Um, Even if you can't attend live, it's totally fine. I record it and then I send out the recording right afterwards so you can do it when you have free time.
That's
So
awesome.
that's a great intro to my work. And then from there, I have my self-guided program. So if you do have anxiety, this is a great, gentle practice that gives you tools to navigate. And so you can find that one at feelcalmtoday.com. And
Okay.
those are meditations for you to keep forever. And then also
Amazing.
on social media, I'm really active on Instagram under my name, Ana Lilia. And I have meditations on there as well on the IGTV, um, tools on how to ground, come back to your body. Yeah, there's a lot of different free resources for you.
Amazing. Amazing places for people to get started and maybe let their breath work journey evolve and grow because oh my gosh, I did it this morning. I've been doing breath work consistently every morning for the past like month and a half. And I every time it changes my mood. That's why I
Yeah.
was like, that's why I brought that up earlier, where I was like,
Mhm.
I was having a moment this morning on my walk, just feeling a little fear come up, feeling a little wave of grief come up.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, what do we know to do? Time for
Mhm.
your breath work practice. I did a little movement, then I did a little breath work, like 10 minutes of movement, 10 minutes of breath work. And I was like, I can see now.
Yeah.
I can feel into my life and my soul
Yes.
now.
I do it in between my sessions because sometimes I have back to back.
Yeah.
And I get up. I just let my body move how it wants to. Does it want to shake? Do I want to growl? Do I want to make a sound? And connecting with my breath as well. And not only does it help me to clear my energy, so I'm like sparkly for the next client, but it does also bring a boost of energy
Yep.
and grounding again and gets me ready for the next person.
I love that. I love that. And I know before we started recording, you mentioned your self love 5-day offering that's coming
Yes,
up.
I'm
So
so
please tell us about
excited.
that. Yeah.
So I'm launching my Summer of Self-Love series, and it's going to be a free 5-day challenge where each day you'll get different exercises to help you love yourself more, to be confident, to recognize what an amazing human being soul you are. And that's going to be coming up during the summer solstice. So in a few weeks, June 20th. And I'm excited about that. I'm also going to supplement that with live sessions, breathwork sessions throughout the summer. So for the next 3 months, we're going to be just connecting with ourselves. And I might even invite guest healers. I haven't quite decided to make it just a really fun, loving summer, especially after such a traumatic year. And now that things are starting to go back to normal, but there's a lot of unprocessed emotions there. And it's really important to, again, go back and take care of ourselves first so that we can be of service or just do life in a more grounded, empowered way.
Yeah. So we can feel good about who we are and why we're
Yes.
here. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this. I
Yeah.
am definitely going to put everything in the show notes so people know where to find you. And it was so wonderful to speak with you. Thank you for being here.
Likewise. Thank you, Caroline.
Okay, babies. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Huge thank you to Ana for being on the show, for sharing her work with the world, and for helping so many. You should definitely get in on her self-love series and go check out her work. Again, you can find her at analilia.net. and on Instagram _Ana_Lilia. And that's all in the show notes for you. And I will see you so soon. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please, if you will, take a moment to subscribe, to rate, to review, to share how this podcast is serving you. I would love to hear that. And it really does help spread the vibes and the message and get this podcast in front of more people and into the ears of more humans. So the more ratings and reviews that we get, the more searchable the podcast is. And that's just like how this crazy podcast world works. So I would love if you would take just 2 seconds to rate and even share this episode with a friend, someone that you feel would resonate with Anna's story and with everything that we're sharing here at Get a Helmet. I love you. I see you. And I will see you next time on the Get a Helmet podcast. Bye.